Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it's Mike here at Gamefromscratch, and let's do something completely free of controversy. What we're going to do is decide which is the better game engine, Unity or Godot. Okay, first off, there is no best engine. Some engines are better suited for some people and for some tasks, while other engines are suited for different things. So some people could think that Godot is the greatest game engine in the universe. Other people can think the same thing about Unity, and both would be right. Now, that makes for a pretty useless video, though. So what I instead am going to do is look at 6 pros for each of those game engines. So if you're trying to decide between Unity or Godot in 2025 or beyond, hopefully this will help you. I'm also going to look at 3 cons. That means no matter how you look at it, I am going to be either praising or insulting your game engine of choice today. Do keep in mind, I try to be as unbiased and critical as possible in this video, but I'm no doubt going to offend some people, and hey, that's the nature of the beast. So if you're trying to decide between Unity or the Godot game engine in 2025 or beyond, hopefully this helps you. Let's start off with the pros. We're going to start off with Unity first. We're going to go back and forth, ping pong back and forth between the different game engines. Pro number 1 when it comes to Unity, and this one is a big deal. And it's battle tested. There used to be an expression back in the day, no one ever got fired for choosing IBM, and there's a lot of logic behind that. Basically, it means it will work. You know Unity will make the game you want because it's already made it, most likely. So you've got some very successful titles out there that have been developed using Unity. And this gives you kind of a peace of mind. You choose Unity, you know others have achieved X, Y, or Z because it's all out there. It is among the most battle-tested game engines available. So that is a huge plus for Unity. Now, what about Godot? Well, obviously, let's start with a very simple one to understand. Godot is free. And when I say free, I mean all of the frees. Free as in beer and free as in freedom. It is free and open source. It is under the MIT license, which is a very liberal license in terms of what it lets you do with it. You don't need to give your code back or anything, although obviously it would be nice to contribute it back if you could. At the same time, you pay absolutely nothing. Asterisk caveat. There are some things you potentially pay for. We'll get to that later on in the cons section. But pretty much, Godot is as cheap as a game engine can get, which is pretty sweet. And again, completely open source, which is a big deal. All right, next up, Unity. This one I actually think is one of the secrets of Unity's success, and I've said this for ages, and it is the asset store. Unity has the largest asset store by like a country mile. You can get anything you need for Unity. So even if you don't want to create something yourself or you can't create something yourself, there's a pretty good chance that you can just buy it. You can find assets in every single art style you can imagine. You can find AI systems. You can find tools that improve Unity. All of these things are available on the asset store, the largest asset store by far. Unfortunately, there is a little bit of fragmentation in the Unity asset store because of the various different pipelines and versions and so on, but by far and away, they have the most comprehensive asset store out there, and you do, again, kind of get some peace of mind out of this because, again, if you can't do something, you don't have the time to do something, or you simply don't want to do something, there's a pretty good chance you can just pick it up on the asset store. Now, Godot, pro number 2. It's developing incredibly quickly. Now, it's the youngest of these game engines, so that makes a lot of sense. So that, more features every release, but it's staggering how fast Unity is improving and Godot is improving and how many new features you get in each new release of Godot. I kind of liken this to Autodesk versus Blender. Now, you see a new update of 3D Studios Max or Maya, it will add 3 or 4 new marquee features, and maybe that's it. Whereas you get a new Blender update, it's got like 30 or 40 new features. It's the same deal in Godot. Godot is improving at a staggering rate. And so that's one of those things. Each new version brings a lot to the table, and that's not necessarily something that you see in the world of Unity. Now, Unity, pro number 3, it has a large community. And this actually has a couple of results or benefits from it. When it comes to hiring people, it's easiest to find Unity developers. When it comes to getting documentation or training or anything like that, certification, etc., there is this huge community out there. There are books, there are courses, there are all of these things. The largest community of game engine users is Unity, bar none. There are more people using Unity to create games than any other engine out there. And obviously that goes to if you need to find help or search for another problem, or since so many people are using the engine, you can find all of these things. So that is definitely an upside in the world of Unity. Now, when we go back to Godot, upside number 3 or pro number 3, is programming options. And this is actually a really cool aspect of Godot. So at the core, Godot is written in C++, but you can use a programming language based vaguely on Python called GDScript to do a lot of your game logic. But on top of that, they have a full-blown extension system called GD Extension. And through the GD Extension, people have written support for pretty much every language you can think of. You've got a version of C++ with live hot reloads. You've got Rust, you've got JavaScript, you've got Lua. All of these languages are available. Unfortunately, the visual scripting language that was built into Godot was axed, because honestly, it wasn't very good. But there have also been visual programming languages added inside of the engine through GD extensions. Also, by the way, this is true of the marketplace as well. Kind of goes back to my point about the asset store in Unity. There are a number of visual programming languages like Bolt, etc., that were created and used, and ultimately Unity bought that and made that available free. So there are a number of programming options on the Unity side, but Godot definitely has that beat. They've also got C# support out of the box, which is like 95% of the way there. So frustrating that it's not quite 100 yet, but if you want to use multiple different programming languages, that is where Godot really shines. And then we're going back to the Pro for the Unity game engine. Well, here is platform support. And this one is they're a big company, and they deal with other big companies on a one-to-one basis. That means, let's say Nintendo is bringing out the Switch 3. They will have that technology so that when it launches, or when the SDKs to develop games launches, Unity will support it. So if there is a new VR headset, Unity will support it. Day one support for basically any hardware out there, I don't think you will find better than Unity and Unreal. So those two, just based on the nature of them being just so big of players, every hardware manufacturer reaches out to them to make sure that their hardware works with the Unity game engine. So if you're looking to support as many platforms as possible, Unity really shines here. And then one of the really big strengths, and this is kind of a weakness on the Godot side, is you've got day one console support, PlayStation, Xbox, etc. Obviously, so if you want to develop console titles or console first titles, that's a big plus in the world of Unity. All right, another pro / minor con for the Godot game engine is, well, Unity has more people using it. I would argue that the people using the Godot game engine are more zealous about it, are more helpful, are more of a community. There is a very zealous community behind the Godot game engine. Perhaps sometimes a little too zealous. Maybe this comment section down below might illustrate that. Let's put it this way. It isn't generally a thing for Unity users to go into a topic video about Godot and you know, cause stuff, whereas the opposite, yeah, I can't say that being true, but the flip side of this is you have this passionate community that is there to help. So if you go on the Discord, or the multiple Discords actually, or the Reddits, or whatever, it's so much more active, and you can find that community of support there probably better than any of the other major engines out there. So again, a zealous community can be a double-edged sword, especially when it comes to like perceptions of an engine in its community, but you can't argue at all that the people behind the Godot game engine are passionate about it and generally will do a lot to help each other out as a result. All right, so this next one is going to seem like a bit of a cop-out because it's going to be a pro for both of them, and that is a robust set of tools. But you can't talk about Unity and not say it doesn't have great tooling. Unity has pretty much every tool that you can imagine. Now, some of them, of course, have been ignored for far too long, and some of them are basically like retired without in all but name only. But basically, if you need to do something in Unity, there is a pretty damn good chance that it has the tooling for that. Also, on top of the huge tool set for things like animations and graphics and terrain and so on, you also get first-class C# support. Also, you have DOTS, the data-oriented technology stack, is now fully implemented, which got things for like doing parallelization of your code and so on. You've also got a bunch of supporting tools around it. So you've got ad solutions and analytics and lobbying and so on. So they've got their whole cloud side of things that it may not be for everyone, but if you are looking for that stuff and you want it integrated into Unity, they have it. So when it comes to tooling, Unity is like really stocked in that area. And I would say that they have an advantage, especially in the world of 3D. They have probably better 3D performance than Godot, and they probably have broader and better 3D tools than Godot. But let's go over to the pros for Godot. Hey, they've got a robust set of tools. Yeah, so this is both a pro for both these engines. They're very well-rounded. Again, Unity has been around longer, has more tooling. Again, it also has more abandoned tooling from the past. And again, I won't say that Godot is as robust as Unity in some areas, and definitely in 3D, but when it comes to 2D, I think that Godot is eating Unity's lunch by the tooling it provides. It is so easy to create 2D games inside of Godot, and Unity has sort of been neglecting their 2D tooling, I would say. So my breakdown on this one is advantage Unity for 3D, advantage Godot for 2D, and then when it comes to UI and creating applications, like non-gaming applications, Godot really shines here. Whereas Unity, it's got its UI toolkit, it should get better, but doing UIs in Unity used to be a little bleh. Again, there is a new solution there, but this is one of those areas where Godot just banged, like really good there. So they both have a great and robust set of tools available. And then final pro on the side of the Unity game engine, kind of a bit of a repeat from the robust set of tools, but I think this is important enough to be on its own. It's got proven 3D performance, something that Godot really can't claim right now. And it's so, especially with the dots and job systems coming online, Unity has proven itself capable of creating 3D scenes of level detail that Godot just hasn't yet. So again, if you're looking to create a 3D title and you've got really high-end needs, you're going to probably want to look at either a Unity or an Unreal Engine there. If it's more of a simpler implementation, you could definitely do it in Godot, but Godot just doesn't have that proven 3D track record yet. And now the final con for Godot, and this one it's staggering in this world. Right now, if you install Unreal Engine, it's something like 35 gigabytes. If you install Unity, depending on what you install, it's somewhere between, like, say, 1.5 and, say, 7 gigabytes in size. When you install Godot, it's like 60 megabytes. It's got the smallest footprint you've ever seen. And you can run Godot on Android. You can run Godot on the browser if you wish to do so, or you can just download it. Here's a little secret about Godot. I don't keep it installed. I literally just go to godotengine.org and download the most recent version because it's like a 50 megabyte download. It takes 2 seconds. It takes me less time to just download and extract it than it would be just to find it on my hard drive. And again, I obviously always want the newest version or whatever, but it is such a small download. The footprint of Godot is just staggeringly tiny, especially considering just how much is packed in there. So that is, ladies and gentlemen, the pros between Unity and the Godot game engine. I think, again, you can see how both these game engines are a good choice and where their strengths lie. Again, I think that the TLDR I would put in there is Unity has an edge when it comes to 3D. Godot has an edge when it comes to 2D. They both have pretty robust sets of tooling. They both have a pretty good-sized community with different strengths and weaknesses in that regard. And yeah, that would be my pros. Now we're getting into probably where the controversy starts, and that's where we get into the cons. And this is one of those areas that has changed a whole lot since I first covered this, like about 6 years ago. The cons. And the biggest one is, let's start with Unity. And Unity is straightforward. Unity is publicly traded. And that isn't said about any of these other companies out there. So Unity is the only game engine that is from a publicly traded company. Even Unreal Engine is privately held. So they're not beholden to the stock market, to making share prices go up, etc. And we saw this. When Unity had their IPO and they went public, then they went on a tear of like buying companies like Weta Digital and so on, and then they merged with Iron Source, and all these things were stuff to keep shareholders happy, not game developers happy. And this shareholder first attitude bit them and bit them hard. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, they did this thing called the runtime fee, where they basically just wanted money from everyone that ever created a Unity game ever. It was ludicrous, and it cost them most of their C-suite. Their CEO is gone, most of their board is gone, their stock price absolutely cratered. The runtime fiasco was insanely stupid. I would actually argue it was the single dumbest thing I can think of in the history of game development. That's a pretty hard level of stupid, I would say. So that all stems from the fact that ultimately they're beholden to shareholders before they are beholden to everybody else. And that is going to shape their future direction as well. So that is a definite negative when it comes to Unity, and I know that's why if anyone moved away from Unity in the more recent years, it probably wasn't technical. It was probably more stuff like this, or EULA changes that you disagreed with, etc. So that, them being a publicly traded company and having very, let's say, mixed allegiances for what their priorities are, that is a big deal. Now, the good news is the new CEO seems to be going with a developer focus. They seem to be all about becoming smaller and more nimble and not chasing these idiotic purchases and acquisitions like Iron Source or Weta, etc. So hopefully we're dealing with a new Unity, but you got to remember what happened, and that's got to be at the back of your mind at all time. All right, so let's go with Godot. We also could argue that Godot sort of has the opposite problem in that Unity is a big company with a lot of people there that do things like public relations and so on. You know, even when the top level people screw up, yeah. But there are at least a number of layers of people in the middle saying, "Is this a good idea?" Well, in the world of Godot, it's not quite that simple. So in Godot, you have just a person, just a person in charge of the public relations, and that person can make some very bad decisions, and those can have a political fallout as a result. So in the world of big companies, you do have a PR person going, "Is this a good idea?" before something goes out to the public. In Godot, that isn't necessarily the case, and it has led to, let's just say, a little controversy in the past. And on top of that, there is also a little bit of a thing developing with the leadership of Godot, in that Godot is a community-led project, and a lot of the people behind Godot are now also at a commercial entity called W4 Games. Now, those are some of like the founders and heads and so on. They're still contributing back to Godot, and that company sponsors Godot development. But at the same time, they are making things closed at that company, things like console support. And you can get console support through other means. But if W4 Games didn't exist, would we have had console support available in open source Godot? And, you know, there are some arguments why they couldn't implement it, but then you look at other open source projects or near open source, like, say, Defold, which has console support, and it isn't an issue. So you have that kind of a divided loyalties with the leadership of Godot and the formation of W4 Games. And then, again, we also have potentially a lack of the professional safeguards when it comes to social media, etc., that you have at other companies that don't necessarily exist at Godot and can get Godot into a little bit of hot water. Now, back to the cons for Unity. And this is kind of a flip side to a pro for Godot. Unity is closed. There's no other way to look at it. The source code on, say, for Unreal Engine, it is source available. So if you use Unreal Engine, you can access the entirety of the source code. You can make changes, you can do patches, etc. And when you deal with Godot, it is fully open source. That means you can do what the hell you want with the source code. When it comes to Unity, you can't contribute to development or anything like that. You can get a custom fork of the source code. So there are definitely companies out there, such as like Gauge and Impact. They have a license that has given them the source code. And at this point in time, they basically have their own version of the Unity game engine going on. But there's no contribution back to the main source base. In order to get access to Unity source code, you have to give them a lot of money. Basically, it's a negotiated license that's just the nature of the beast, something to be aware of. And yeah, that is one negative for Unity. It is definitely closed. It's the most closed of the engines in that regard, between the big three anyways. Now, when we come back to the Godot game engine, this is an opposite of a pro for the Unity game engine, is a lack of hardware support. So unlike Unity and Unreal Engine, Godot doesn't necessarily have companies in there on day one working with them. Now, the nice thing is more companies are reaching out to Godot and helping make support for their products, but it doesn't necessarily mean, like, so with if a new VR headset is launched or whatever, you can guarantee that Unity and Unreal Engine are going to support it. You can't necessarily say the same about the Godot game engine. Also, the open nature of Godot means that implementing proprietary tech, and this again is part of W4 Games' arguments for why console supporting needs to be through a closed company. Well, that is a challenging thing. So you can't implement proprietary tech as easily as you could, say, with a closed system like Unity. So when it comes to hardware, at least compared to the other two platforms, it just doesn't have the same level of out-of-the-box support. And that is, again, if you're developing for a console first, like you're creating a PlayStation 6 game, or an Xbox, what are they going to call it, 4B? Who knows at this point. But let's just say the Xbox future, whatever, you want to support it on day one, you're better off picking a Unity or an Unreal over a Godot. It's just the simple reality of it. And then final con for Unity, and again, this isn't comprehensive, so this isn't all the pros, this isn't all the cons, but these are the TLDR versions, in my humble opinion. The most important things is commercial software. And what does that mean? Well, it means you're paying for it. Is that a bad thing? I've got nothing against paying for software. You know what? If you get value out of it, you have to pay for it. But at the same time, let's keep in mind, you have to pay for Unity. And it's gotten, one of the upsides to the whole runtime fee fiasco is the free tier got more capable and they removed the idiotic splash screen requirements. So you could do a lot more for free than you used to be able to do with Unity. But at the end of the day, if you're working on a project for a commercial client or something like that, you need to pay per seat, per each person in, where if you're using Godot, you simply would not have to. Again, I have no issue with charging for software, and that is the way that Unity is set up. But at the same time, when you're trying to pick the merits between two solutions, and one is completely free, and one has a monthly cost attached to it, that's obviously an advantage for the one that's free, right? So again, I'm not saying that because it's a con that it's a negative against the product. I just want to point out, again, there is a price tag attached to Unity that there may not be when it comes to Godot. And to a certain degree, Unreal Engine does theirs only after you make $1 million in revenue. So that is a negative when it comes to choosing between which one. And a lot of it comes down to how your company is structured, etc. But there is a per-seat license fee attached to Unity that other engines don't necessarily have. And then the final con of the Godot game engine, and this again is a mirror of what I was saying as a major pro of the Unity game engine, it's much less proven. That's simple. Again, no one got fired for choosing IBM. It's the same deal. No one gets fired for choosing Unity, unless, of course, they do another runtime fee thing. It boils down to there aren't as many titles that you could point out to that have been developed with Godot saying, that can be made with this engine. If they can do that, I can do that. We just don't have that yet. We've got a lot of things in the works right now. So we've got some shooters, first-person shooters, etc. But right now, there's not a lot of proof that the Godot game engine is necessarily capable of doing X, Y, or Z. Whereas in Unity, you can point at successful titles that have shipped and made hundreds of millions of dollars. Godot, in the indie space, we're getting more and more shipped titles there, but it just doesn't have the proven track record of a Unity or an Unreal Engine. And that's definitely one of the biggest cons about choosing Godot right now. I do think, 5 to 10 years time, we just won't say that. It's sort of like the the Blender trajectory. It used to be you could say, well, Max and Maya, they work because you know they can work. Whereas Blender hadn't been proven in a lot of these environments yet. But then Blender literally just won an Oscar like a couple of months ago. I think it was an Oscar anyways. So it is proving itself, and Godot is going to go down that same road, but it hasn't proven itself fully yet. And you just don't get that peace of mind that this is an engine that can do the project I need to create. Now, if your game is relatively simple, this doesn't really matter. But if you're going to push things a little bit, then again, you're going to be the first person to prove that this engine is capable of doing that. And when you don't have that peace of mind that someone else has already done it, that can be a little bit scary. All right, ladies and gentlemen, as unbiased as I hopefully could make it, and hopefully that was useful to you, if you're on the fence between choosing Unity or Godot, that's it. I know there's people out there that hate Unity, there are people out there that hate Godot, and I'm not here to change your mind. I really, you know what, you do what you want to do. But if you're on the fence, honestly, both are excellent engines. Neither are going away anytime soon, somewhat against popular opinion in some cases. They are both perfectly viable engine in most cases, but obviously there are pros and cons of both, and hopefully we captured them here. Now, if you've got more, let me know them in the comments down below. Again, some things will fit into different categories, but if you have other pros and other cons, let's layer them out. Let's hear them out down in the comments, and let's try to keep this as civil as possible. So, ladies and gentlemen, choosing Unity versus Godot in 2025. Hopefully you found that useful. I will talk to you all later. Goodbye.